Today we're going to be talking about forgiveness that surpasses human ability. Let's dive in. Welcome to Gems of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Wendy. Here, we share real-life testimonies and experiences with God, and we learn together that He is near, that He still speaks to His people, and that He wants to speak to you, giving you your own gems of knowledge. So today is my awesome guest and friend, Shauna Worley.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. We always have such great conversations.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. So, Shauna, you were an associate pastor, and then you just finished theological school? I'm not sure the word.
So I just finished the requirements for credentialing with the Churches of God.
Okay. To become a minister?
Yeah, to become an ordained pastor.
Ordained pastor. Very, very cool.
Yep.
Oh, that's really, really exciting.
I'm excited.
So yeah, we got a special one here. So I always love when we're together, and it just seems like the Spirit always shows up. So I'm really hoping that we get a lot more of you on the podcast aside from just today. So I want to just start by just maybe exploring how you knew God was real and how He started moving in you.
I don't know if I could pin it down to a certain day or experience or something like that. I was raised in church. I just always felt drawn there. I always felt like that's where I was supposed to be. I enjoyed going to church when I was younger. My mom said that Jesus was one of the first words that I said as a baby. And so, she wasn't surprised at the path that I took in life. Because I had shared with her that I was starting to take classes and that I was pursuing some sort of ministry, and she wasn't surprised. And so, that's always nice to hear. But I just always felt drawn to Him. And I really can't say that there was a particular moment that it all happened. I got baptized when I was 11, and just always felt very comfortable at church, and I just felt like that's where I was supposed to be, Yeah.
So you were always good, huh?
No. It's so much easier as a child, you know what I mean? But I can look back as a child and just be like, wow, I just knew He was real, and I just knew that that's where I was supposed to be, and I just knew that I loved Jesus. And then one day you get to a certain age and it's just not cool anymore. And I will be the first to admit that I quickly compromised my beliefs and my faith, to be part of the cool kids at school.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be made fun of. I didn't want to be left out.
Yeah.
I had true FOMO in junior high.
Yeah.
And so
I think we all do. Yeah.
Right? But some people, they never waver. That doesn't bother them to be excluded, to be an outcast or anything like that. That's just not my story.
Yeah.
That is something that I've had to work on, is just to not care what other people think. And so I will fully admit that I compromised, and in doing so, it created a gap.
Well, before we started recording, we were actually talking about identity and how easy it is for us to be kind of manipulated in who we should be and what we should be.
Yeah.
Because especially as children, but I see it with even now, we still kind of wonder, why are we here? What is our purpose? And there's really only one source of true identity. And if we aren't tapped into that source, then it's really easy for the world outside sources, or dare say I, the enemy,
Yeah.
to even try to manipulate us into going down the wrong path, making us believe that we should be something different than we are, or do things we normally wouldn't do
Mm-hmm.
to be the cool kid,
Yeah.
or to, follow down that path of false identity that we went through a training last year, the identity exchange, that said that most of the time our identity comes from the traumas we experience in our youth, right?
Yeah.
And so when you consider those things, the identities that we develop,
they're false identities,
are not from God.
Yeah. It's not where we truly began.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to be rooted in God when you don't even know who he is or who you are in him.
And for so long you've believed.
Yeah.
You believe the lie.
Right.
You believe the false identity.
Yeah.
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 I mean, that's just who I am. That's how our family is. That's what we do.
Yeah.
All of those things that we believe that really are just not true.
Yeah.
And the way that they're not the way God created it to be.
Yeah.
So how do you think that you moved into realizing that you needed God in your life?
It's crazy to say that I was never at a place where I didn't think I needed him. I knew what I was doing was wrong. It was fun. It was what everybody else was doing. And so I did it anyways. But I always knew where I was supposed to be. I will be honest and admit I didn't have the courage for a long time.
So what did it take?
I mean, I went in and out of church throughout my 20s. When after I had my son, I got back in church and I took him to church, and I did that for a really long time. I did that for a few years. And then I didn't go. And then I went back. And then I didn't go. I wavered. Literally my entire 20s. I was at church, and then I was back out. And then I was at church, and then I was back out. I rode the fence for a really long time. I was lukewarm. I knew where I was supposed to be. I knew he was real.
Yeah.
I just did not fully surrender. And so I was 33 when I finally surrendered to the Lord, and it took probably the most life-altering event in my life.
Tell me about that.
It took the passing of my dad. It was 2008 that he got sick, and it took them a while to figure out what was wrong with him. And it was at that time that my husband and I had started attending a church here in town, and we started going a little more regularly than usual, but when my dad got sick, I really started going. I really got intense.
Why?
It's the weirdest thing, but from the moment he got sick, I knew we had 2 years.
So it was almost a sense of needing to make it right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was one of those things where it's like, no matter what I did, I think it's one of those moments when I truly just felt helpless. I can't fix this. I can't make him well.
There it is.
Yeah. I can't make him well. There's nothing I can do to make him well. And so I had to seek a greater power. I had to seek the one who could make him well.
Yeah.
But I look back and I realize that I never prayed that the Lord would heal him. I prayed that the Lord would not make him suffer and would take away his pain.
Yeah.
Because from the moment he got sick, I knew that it would be done in 2 years.
So my turning point was in a moment of, it was that desperation too, where it was like, it's out of my hands. It's beyond what I can do. And if you're real, I need you now.
Yeah.
And I think that is where the surrender happens. Because until then, we're striving in our own strength. We got this. We can do it. We got it figured out. Right?
Yeah.
And it takes that moment of, I think, realization of, yeah, I don't got this.
Yeah.
I don't have this figured out.
This is beyond me. This is beyond a strength that I have. This is beyond any of my capabilities.
Right.
And the thought of losing our parents, I think, can really it can bring you to your knees.
Oh yeah.
I think regardless of your relationship with them, from the day we're born, we just want the love of our parents. And so the thought of them not being here any longer, it takes a piece of you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and when my stepdad passed, I don't remember if you were there with me, because we've been friends several years, but maybe it was a little before you. I was driving to a women's conference with a van full of women to Kansas City when I got the call my dad died. And so I had to finish the drive with a group full of women, wait for my husband to drive up and get me, which it's a couple hours. Then on the way back, there was a flood. So it was a process. Then we had to drive to Utah. So it was a couple days before I could even get there.
Yeah.
And in that time, for me, I'd never experienced mourning like that. And what came up in me was, is any of it even real? Or do they just tell us this stuff to make us feel better about death? There's such a finality to it. And then you wonder, is there really even anything after this? And so then when you have that loss and that thought of losing them, right? Then there, for me, was also a fear of, where are they? What will happen to me?
Yeah.
And that really pushed me to God, into God's arms, in seeking.
Yeah.
As well.
I know, watching him suffer the way that he did it was 2 years. I can remember just thinking, this cannot be the way that it goes. We live our life, we suffer, and we die. Right. There has to be more to this than what I'm seeing right now. Lord, show me that there is more to this. And in asking those questions and in seeking him and in praying for my dad, it brought me back to, I guess, where I was as a little girl, in knowing where I was supposed to be. He had shown me when I was a little girl. I saw myself preaching in front of a very large crowd.
When you were little?
When I was little.
Wow.
I saw it. But the church that I was raised in, women weren't allowed to do that. And so I didn't understand what I was seeing. I knew what I was doing. I was on a stage in a very large arena preaching. I knew I was preaching. But I'm in a church where I'm not allowed to do this. How am I seeing this? And so you know what you're seeing, but you don't really understand what you're seeing. And is this real? Am I making this up? But through my dad's illness and it bringing me back to the Lord, he reminded me of that vision, and this is where you were always supposed to be.
Reminded you of your purpose and identity.
Yes. Yeah.
That he showed you when you were little.
Yeah. And so almost immediately, with my dad getting sick, I saw him walking me into that purpose. When my dad was in the hospital, the last time, we were, me and my sisters and my mom and my grandpa, we were all huddled around his bed. And I heard the Lord whisper to me and he said, you need to pray. And I'm talking to myself here, and I said, Lord, nobody's going to want to pray. And he said, lead them in prayer. And I'm arguing it. My dad is on his deathbed. We're all surrounded the bed. And I'm like, Lord, nobody's going to want to pray, and he told me again, you need to lead them in prayer. You won't get this opportunity again.
Wow.
Okay. And so I just raised up my head and I said, would anybody like to pray? And they all looked at me and went, yes, yes. And I was like, oh gosh, now I really got to do this. Okay. And so I led my family in prayer.
Wow.
That was the first time that I had done it. Was my dad was dying, and I can remember my mom was standing on this side and one of my oldest sister was on this side and my grandfather's over there. And, my other sisters they're along the other side of the bed and everyone's crying. And that was the first time that I saw the Lord walking me in the direction of my purpose. Here, this is what you were supposed to be doing all this time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm so glad you're back.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we finally get to pick up where we left off. And I'm going to start with the people that I'm going to start with your family. And this is where you're going to start to establish who you are and who I've called you to be. And so that was the first time I led my family in prayer. And my father passed a few hours later. I mean, we all stayed the night at the hospital that night with him. And he passed at 5:30 the next morning.
So some of the things that I'm seeing as we speak is that God shows up in ways that maybe we don't normally recognize, right? Mm-hmm. So you had a vision as a child. You had no idea what it was, where it came from, what it was for, right? But God was putting that into you. He was moving, giving you something that you could remember and hold on to later. Which, how often does God do that? Gives us something we don't recognize at the time
Yep.
and then brings it up later for our good. But also that it was just a thought that came into your mind. You should pray with them. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a thought. And how often do we get those thoughts and just blow them off? Mm-hmm. But that is the Holy Spirit speaking to us. And until we can recognize, because it says that his sheep will know his voice. Jesus' sheep will know his voice, that we don't know him yet to realize that's his voice. But that he is right there always trying to talk to us. Mm-hmm. And that we can move into a place where we start to realize and understand he is real. Mm-hmm. He does speak to us.
And we know it's him. We learned this in our training last year. If it glorifies God, if it motivates you, and it aligns with Scripture. Mm-hmm. And like you just said, John 10, my sheep know my voice.
Yes.
They hear it. They obey me, Mm-hmm. And so I knew it was him telling me to pray with them.
And when you said, no, because so often we feel ill-equipped or unworthy or even the people, they're not going to want me
Lord,
to pray.
I've had this experience before.
Yeah, they don't want to pray.
They're going to laugh at me.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. They're going to laugh at me.
Yeah.
That's what I experienced, not necessarily, just from my siblings, but from friends. Yeah. When I would profess, my beliefs and things like that, they would laugh at me. And so it was my fear.
Yeah.
It was that fear of being rejected again.
Yeah.
And please don't make me be rejected. My dad's about to die, And so it really was. It was that fear of being rejected in that moment when here I am, pouring out my heart. Would you guys like to pray?
But in that coming back and saying, oh, he didn't just, I'm going to just leave you then. Mm-hmm. He lovingly gave you another opportunity. Hey, you're not going to get another chance to do this. Yeah. Let's move in this direction.
Yeah.
He continues to give us opportunities to listen, to hear him, to move. And what a great experience you ended up having because you did obey, right?
And he didn't force me to do anything, but
Yeah.
he did quietly remind me. He told me something that I needed to hear, which was, you won't get this opportunity again. To pray for your family.
Right.
Here when your dad is about to die. You won't get this opportunity again.
Yeah.
Isn't it sad that I had to hear that? That's what I had to hear so that I had the courage. You know what I mean? But that fear of rejection,
it's real.
It's real. And it had shut me down for so many years. And that would continue to be what I would have to overcome, was that fear of rejection, Well, after that, then, the next time that he would continue to push me forward was, the Lord told me to speak at my dad's funeral. And so I delivered, I had written a eulogy. I guess you'd call it a eulogy. But I remember sitting down at my dining room table and just praying about what I needed to say. And I just said, Lord, just tell me everything so that I can write it down. I was so afraid that I would forget my dad. I was afraid that if I didn't write it down, that I would forget. And of course, that's not true. There's no way I could forget my dad. But that would be the next time that he would start to move me towards what he had called me to do, and that was speaking at my dad's funeral.
So things weren't always really good with you and your dad, though, huh?
No, we had some tough times there. It wasn't always like that. I'm the fourth out of 8 kids.
Most of them girls.
Most of them girls, yes. 6 girls, 2 boys. I was number 4, but I was the first redhead.
Oh.
And I get my red hair from my dad. And so, I was a bit of a daddy's girl when I was little. I was absolutely crazy about my dad. Was the manliest man. There wasn't anything he couldn't fix. There wasn't anything he couldn't do. And nobody messed with his kids and got away with it. And I always felt so safe with my dad. And I was crazy about him when I was a little girl. Some things happened in our family, and things changed when I was 9. And that's when my dad started drinking all the time. And when that changed, our family changed and the whole family dynamic changed.
So really hard things happened when you were little, that your dad kind of felt were out of his control.
I think he felt responsible for.
That he wasn't responsible for. Things that couldn't be taken back. And so he carried that guilt and that weight.
Yeah.
Which turned him to alcoholism.
Yeah.
Because I remember you had said one time that your younger siblings didn't know the same dad that the older siblings did.
Yeah.
That he was different.
Yeah. Everything changed when I was 9, and that's when number 8 was born. So number 8 did not ever know the father that I knew for the first 9 years. We were, I don't know, when you see families from the 80s, like that was us. We were, they'd pack all of us up and we'd go to the drive-in movies, and, we had a pickup truck, and, we'd all climb in the back of the truck, and, mom would sit in the back of the van with the babies, and, we did picnics at the park, and Easter was a big deal, and my dad and my mom, and we would all dress up for Halloween, and all that sort of stuff. Like, we were just a really normal family. And then
tragedy struck.
It just completely changed. That's the way that I remember it. And, before my dad passed, we had a conversation, And I shared with him that, to me, my experience, I had two different families. I had the one before the age of 9 and the one after. And
so you and your dad kind of drifted apart.
We did. He began to drink all the time, and he had a lake house, and he would get off work on Fridays, and he would go to the lake all weekend, and he would come home Sunday night in time to generally go to bed, and then he'd go to work. And when he got off work, Monday through Thursday, he went to the bar, and
Wow.
he'd come home about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then get up and go to work the next day.
Wow.
So,
and then be gone again.
And then
on the
be gone,
weekends.
and then be gone again on the weekends.
So as an adult, you kind of felt you probably felt betrayed by that, or something, hurt, something. Because I know if I was really close to my dad and then all of a sudden he just was totally separated, I would feel heartbroken.
Mm-hmm. It was heartbreaking, and especially when the fact that when he was home and he was drinking, he verbally wasn't very nice. You know, he would say, really mean things, and I know I can look back now and realize that a lot of that was the alcohol, but
as a child, you don't know that.
As a child, you don't know that.
You're like my dad, who I loved so much, is now.
He's just not very nice anymore.
Not very nice, and
yeah.
You would almost carry a sense of like maybe guilt or something. Like, what did I do that would make him not love me the same anymore?
Mm-hmm.
I could see how that could really cause some hurt.
Yeah. And so then as an adult, he's doing the same things, and so, we've had, calls to bail him out of jail, and, DUIs, all that sort of stuff. Like, he genuinely had an issue with alcohol, and it, before then, he would, him and his buddies would work on the car, and, all that sort of stuff. And they drink beer and stuff, they'd be in the backyard, working on the race car or somebody's cars or something, music playing, and they drink a couple beers while they fix the car. It wasn't a big deal. Yeah.
Right.
He'd watch the race on Sunday and have a beer, and, stuff like that. It wasn't an issue until things changed within our family, and he began to drink all the time. And so that's when things changed, and it changed our relationship, and because it changed him.
When he got sick, you did feel kind of a sense of responsibility for him, though, didn't you?
Yeah. So by the time he got sick, my parents were divorced, and so there, me and a couple of my sisters, we really kind of band together to take care of him. But I felt responsible. If something happens to your parents when they get older, like, you're supposed to take care of them, right? Like, that's what you do.
Yes. Yeah. That's, I bear that responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't come from the right place, if it's just like, well, this is my job, then it's really not serving anybody. It's really not benefiting anyone. And it's not coming from the heart, and so that's what it was for me for almost the entire time that he was sick. It was like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, and
well, and you're kind of an anomaly in this world, that you love to clean. I'll never forget the day you told me that you look forward to a weekend because you can clean your baseboards. I was like, people do that? So then when you come to my house, I'm like, don't look around. Just eyes forward. Keep your eyes forward at all times.
It's the funniest thing, because it really is. It's just kind of always been something that I just do. Growing up, my mom wasn't like, when you get up, you got to make your bed, you got to do this and that. It wasn't anything like that, but I would get up every morning and make my bed. I had such a feeling of satisfaction that my bed was so nice of me,
Well, and then you couple that with your love language is acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
So when your dad's sick, your way of showing love to him was going and cleaning his house.
You know, I didn't even realize that until you just said that. I'd never put that together.
I just put that together right now.
that I was trying to love him. I hadn't even thought about that. To me, it was always just he needed the help, and it was my job. You know, yeah, he got sick with cancer, and because of his treatments, he was so sick and so weak that he couldn't clean his house. And I was offering to clean his house for a while, and he wouldn't let me. He was very proud. And it was probably about June or July of 2010 when he finally let me start coming and cleaning his house. And that is when, I wish I could say that that's when the Lord started, that's when I really started listening, but it's not. For a long time, I went because that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I resented it. I was exhausted.
Well, you were, you had kids in the home
Yep.
that were going to school, playing sports, all of that.
Yep. I worked
and
full time.
And then you worked full time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so now you got to go and clean your dad's house.
So on top of, he's got doctor's appointments, and so me and a couple of my sisters, we would rotate taking him. But, eventually, everybody's running out of vacation time to burn and all that sort of stuff.
And just steam. You're just like wore out.
Yeah.
It's taxing because it's not really an act of service out of love. Even though it really was, like looking at it,
I can look back now and realize that, but
when you're
felt
in
more
the
like
moment,
obligation.
it was a burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. It felt like a burden at the time. Yeah. And he and I don't know, we would kind of have conversations and stuff, but not really. But in 2010, I really started seeking the Lord. I really got serious. I started attending a Sunday school class at our church, and we were doing the book, The Purpose-Driven Life. And, I'll never forget, it comes with videos, and the very first video said, you will read this book when you're supposed to and with the people that you're supposed to.
Oh.
That's the very first video. And I thought, wow, that's so profound, right? So
how did you even know
I'm supposed to be reading this right now, because that book came out a long time ago.
How often do we read books with other people?
Right?
Not regularly.
Yeah. And so reading this book, it gets into, obviously the book is about your purpose, but then it gets into a chapter of, it starts talking about, but what is my gift? I'm not good at anything. What is it that I do? What do I bring to the table? And so often, like, especially in terms of ministry, we think, I'm not the preacher. I'm not the worship leader. What do I bring to the table? There's really not anything else that's needed, right? And so that's a lie.
Right.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
And reading this book, it said, do you like to cook? Cook a meal for the family down the street. Can you sew? Make some clothes for somebody. Fix someone's clothes, this and that. And it's listing off these very just ordinary things that people can do.
That we do regularly.
That we do. And and so basically the book is like, what are you good at? Use it to serve.
Use it. Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, what am I good at that I can use to serve? And literally a light bulb went off, and the Lord said, that's why you're cleaning your dad's house. And I was like, that's why you got me cleaning my dad's house? Like, you got me over there serving?
Showing acts of service?
I was like, I thought I just liked cleaning and he needed his house cleaned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was like, this is how I have you serving, And I didn't recognize it at first. I was doing it out of obligation. I'm the one who likes to clean. all my siblings. I'm the one who likes to clean. And so I was the one offering to clean his house. And it took him a while to let me come over. But eventually he was at a point where he just needed the help.
Yeah.
And so I would go every Saturday. I'd go every Saturday morning, and I was there all day. And so that's how it started. It was in June or July, and I would go every Saturday, and I'd spend the entire day there just cleaning his house. And we would kind of have conversations, but not too in depth, I guess. I guess the conversations were more profound than I realized looking back, because it was in October. I take that back, September. And I was invited to a ladies' retreat. And it was the lady that was teaching our Sunday school class. She'd invited me to come. And these retreats, it's a very basic format. On Friday nights, we sit around in a circle.
It was Elizabeth.
And everybody shares. It was Elizabeth. It was the Dream Big retreat.
They are amazing, by the way.
And it's the most basic concept. There's nothing fancy about it. And Friday night is the most powerful for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. But me and my sister-in-law went, and everyone sat around in a circle, and you can pass. When it comes to you, you are more than welcome to pass. You don't have to share. And so the first time that they came to me, I passed. I said I didn't want to talk. And as everyone starts sharing, we move around the room, and I'll never forget that I don't know what her name was, but there was a woman sitting over to the right of me, and I just remember she was just so beautiful and so put together and just so well dressed and hair combed and makeup perfect and all that stuff. And she begins to talk about being raised by an alcoholic and how nobody could ever know what went on in her house. Mm-hmm. And how she learned to pretend like everything was okay all the time, because you can't ever tell anybody what goes on at home. And I was like, wow. I would never look at her and think that that's how she was raised. Like, this girl was just so put together, and just, she spoke so well. And, to hear her say, oh, nobody can ever know. Nobody can know what it's like. And so you learn how to pretend like everything's okay. She said, and I still do that. I pretend like everything's okay. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then we go around, and we get to another woman who says that she is taking care of her father-in-law, who is currently dying, and she's not sure if he knows the Lord, and she doesn't know what to do. And so after hearing this woman, my heart is racing, my stomach is turning, and then we get to this next woman, and now I'm rocking back and forth, and I've never experienced the Holy Spirit before, so I have no idea that that's what this is. I'm rocking back and forth, and my sister-in-law is just looking at me. She can tell what
something's
what's happening. She can tell. She knows what's going on in my life and what I'm dealing with right now, and she's just looking at me. And so we get all the way back around, and we get to Elizabeth. So this means we're done. Everybody's had their chance. Everyone's had their chance to talk, and Elizabeth says what she always says. If there's anyone who didn't speak and you want to, I want to give you that opportunity. And so I raised my hand, and I just began to just weep and just lay it all out on the table. My dad has cancer, and he's dying, and I'm so tired, and this and that. And I just began to be like, I'm just, he's sick, but I've got kids, and I've got to work all day, and then I'm cleaning his house all day, and I just don't even think he cares. I spend all day Saturday cleaning his house, and I spend all day Sunday cleaning mine, and then I get up Monday and I go to work again, and then I come home and I got to take care of the kids, and I got to clean house, and then he's got doctor's appointments, so now I got to drive there to get him, and I got to take him, and I'm so tired, and I'm just crying and just bawling, and I'm just like, he doesn't even care. He'd never do this for me. Why am I doing this? He'd never do this for me. He would look at me and say, you have a husband. What do you need me for? You've got kids. You know, he'd never do this for me. Why am I wearing myself out for him? He would never be there for me like this. And I'm just crying and I couldn't control myself. I can't recall the last time that I cried like that. My whole body was shaking. And I'm just, I don't know these ladies. I know my sister-in-law that's next to me. I know Elizabeth. That's it. I don't know the rest of these people. And I'm completely falling apart in front of everybody. And the ladies came over and they just began to pray over me. And I can remember standing in the middle of them, and all these ladies are crowded around me, and they put their hands on me. And as they start praying, I'm just standing there bawling, and I just said, I forgive him. I forgive him. And that was the only thing I could say. I just sat there and just kept saying, I forgive him. I forgive him. I forgive him. And every time I said it, I felt the weight. I felt the weight of just everything coming off of me. I felt it.
Dissipating, like getting lighter.
It was just every time I said, I forgive him, it was like, I forgive him. I forgive him. And it just kept getting further and further from me. And they just kept praying. And I'm just crying and sobbing. And I just kept saying, I forgive him. And it's just, those 3 words, they were just so powerful. And there's so much freedom in it. There's so much freedom in it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what was I forgiving him from? I was forgiving him for every time he let me down. I forgave him for every time he disappointed me. I forgave him for every unkind word he ever said to me. I forgave him for every time he wasn't there. I forgave him for every time he took a drink. I forgave him for every time he came home and fought with my mom. I forgave him for every time, and it just kept getting further and further away. And just the freedom, and I could breathe.
Just the release.
The relief. I honestly felt like I could breathe again. You know what I mean?
That's what the freedom is.
Yes.
Is that burden lifted.
That
and
burden
the relief
is gone.
Yeah, the pain is kind of dissipated.
It's gone. And I stood there and just felt so light. And there was just this relief within me. And, I left that weekend, and that weekend completely changed me. Completely changed me. There was no going back after that. Absolutely no going back. I had no idea that I was experiencing the Holy Spirit in that moment. I had no idea. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before. It was uncontrollable. I was crying uncontrollably. I was speaking uncontrollably, and just this weight coming off of me, and I was shaking, and I can look back now and I can see that that's how the Holy Spirit impacts me. Like I shake, and you know what I mean?
When you speak, you walk back and forth.
I walk back and forth. Yeah. He's just moving me all the time. And that was the first time that I can say that is the first time I felt the Holy Spirit. And I didn't know what it was, but I can look back now and I'm like, that's what it was. And so it was a freedom that he was giving me that night. And those 3 words, I forgive him, over and over. And it just took every bit of bitterness and resentment and every bit of obligation and duty that I was feeling. It was gone. It was gone. And the next weekend, I went over to his house. It was Saturday. And he called before I left the house. He called me at about 9 a.m. and he says, are you coming over today? And I said, yes, I'll be there in just a little bit. Okay, I was just making sure you're coming. And I was like, yep, I'll be there in just a little bit, Dad. And so I get to his house and I walk in the front door and he's sitting on the couch where he always was. He had a spot. I walked in the door and he says, hi, baby. And I was like, hi, Dad. And I walk in and I I just start getting to work like I normally do. You know, I'm in the kitchen and I'm folding his laundry and all that stuff. And when I was in the dining room folding his laundry, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, why don't you take a break for a minute?" And I was like, okay. And he said, "Come over here and sit down." And I was like, okay. And so I sit down and he says, he said, "I understand why, I understand why people with this illness kill themselves." He said, "Because I feel like I've had the flu for about 2 years now." He said, "Every day, I just feel like I got the flu." He said, "But don't worry. He said, I'm not going to do anything." He said, I gave my guns to your grandpa." And I was like, "Okay." He said, "Was I a good dad?" And I said, "You had some good moments." And he said, I did my best. You know, he said, "I called your mama, because by this time let's see, I'm 33. They split up when I was 21, so 12 years that they haven't been together. It was a terrible divorce. He was very angry, very bitter. And he says, "I called your mama, and I apologized." He said, "Sometimes you just got to get past the hurt so you can admit what you did wrong." And he said, "I asked her if she's ever thought about coming home." And it hit me, the fact that he still thought of his house as her home after 12 years. And then he said, "I told her don't answer that because I have no right to ask you that." And he said that he loved me. And he said that he was proud of me. And I had to turn my head because I didn't want him to see me crying. And I left that day, and I immediately called one of my sisters that had been at his house quite a bit. And I said, "What's wrong with Dad?" And she said, What do you mean?" And I said, "Did he get some bad news? Did tests come back that aren't good? Is there something that I need to know?" And she said, "No, nothing's changed. Why do you ask?" And I said, "Well, he's just being really nice." And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, he wants to talk." I said, he wants to talk, and he's being so nice." And she said, "Shauna, he's been like that for months." And I said, "What?" She said, "He's been like that for months." And I sat there in my car outside of his house, and I realized that for months, he called me every Saturday before I came, asking what time I was going to be there. And I realized that every Saturday when I was there, that he was trying to talk to me. And I realized that she was right, that he had been like that for months. But because of my unforgiveness, because of my bitterness and resentment towards him, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. And so I realized that my bitterness and unforgiveness is the lens I was seeing him through. And so nothing he did was ever going to be right.
Right.
Because all I saw was pain. All I saw was he'll hurt me again.
Yeah.
He'll start feeling better and he's going to go back to the bar. You know, if he starts drinking again, then, you know, what's going to happen next? And so this is short-lived. Don't get your hopes up, Shauna. He'll start feeling better again and he'll be back at the bar and he won't need you again. That's the lens I was looking at him from. And that's not what was taking place. The Lord really was working on him during that time. And so he suffered for 2 years, but I think my dad needed that time. And I also needed that time because September of 2010 is when I went to the retreat. That's the following weekend. I went to my dad's. And that's when we had that conversation. That's when I realized he'd been trying to get my attention for months, and I wasn't letting him in. He passed away in December. And I tell you that from September to December, that the Lord blessed my obedience. He blessed my forgiveness because he gave me back the dad that I had when I was a little girl. Those 3 months with him were the most sacred time to me. You know? Yeah. My willingness to forgive, the Lord blessed it, and he gave me back my dad.
Like it says in the scriptures that he will restore all that was taken.
Yeah, and he did. He restored it. And, you know, I can't beat myself up that I could have had 6 months of that. I'm so grateful that I had 3.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, and I love how he was moving you both in a direction to where you could do that, you know. And one of the things I was thinking as you were sharing your story of the forgiveness is it wasn't anything he could do, your dad.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't anything your dad could do. He could never earn the forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nothing that you could do. Because I know from my personal experience with forgiveness, because I've had to forgive big things too with both my parents and step-parents, that it's nothing I could do either.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there was times when the Holy Spirit put in me, you need to forgive that person. I was like, I don't even know how.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how. I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
But it's when you just are willing to just surrender. Another point of surrender.
Yeah.
Right? It's in that surrender and the obedience that God can move.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the beautiful things that he does when we're willing to surrender when it comes to forgiveness is he changes our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
With that person.
Yeah.
When we seek true forgiveness, there's times I thought I forgave. But like with my mom, I thought I forgave her and we moved on as if I had. But everything irritated me. Everything frustrated me. I was constantly just with her. And it wasn't until I went to a retreat and somebody said at the retreat, she did the best she could.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at my mom's life growing up and the things she had to go through,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, she was just trying to survive this world.
Yeah.
She was doing the best she could, kind of like your dad, right?
Yeah. I know it. The willingness to forgive And it did change my perspective on my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I can't forget.
Sure, we don't forget.
We don't forget what life was like. But
something in you changes.
I see it differently now.
Yeah.
I don't resent him for it anymore. I can honestly look at it now and I'm like, he did the best he could. He was broken. He was hurting.
Yeah.
And he was trying to survive.
Yeah.
He was coping. He was using the alcohol to cope.
Yeah.
To heal his pain.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm not angry with him anymore. I realize that he did do the best he could. I realize that he did love me.
Yeah.
You know? But when we're in so much pain, when we're so ashamed and we feel so guilty, we don't know how to show our love.
It's a cycle that perpetuates.
Yeah.
You know, they talk about generational curses, and I think that's almost a generational curse because we have trauma, hurt, a parent that is just trying to cope.
Mm-hmm. We think that they have it all together because they're our parents.
Right.
Because they're older
adults.
than us. And
then we have our own trauma and our pain that we're now trying to cope with.
Yeah.
That kind of gets taken out on our children. And it's this perpetuating cycle.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that the only way it can break is with God, right? He's the only one that can change it. And when I had that realization with my mom, I came home and I was like, she's a widow. And so she's all alone. She lives next door. And I invited her over for dinner and I was brushing her hair on the couch because she loves just touch and, you know. And I was just brushing her hair and she's like melting into me. And God supernaturally just gave me this love for her. And I heard the words precious, she's precious. And I felt the love God had for her, and I saw her through his eyes that she was precious, and it just changed everything. It changed everything. And now everything is different. And that's the beautiful thing that God does when we're willing to just surrender to him.
Yeah.
Is he will give us a new perspective, a new understanding, and a way to truly have healing. It's not just a Band-Aid, I forgive you, let's move on. It's a healing, a restoration to where you were restored with your father back to the glory days, right?
Yeah.
When you were little. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
God is a God of restoration. And he does it in ways that sometimes we don't even understand.
And in doing that, he gave me new perspective because I have 2 kids. And as hard as I have tried to be a good mom, there may come a day when my bill is due. When they come to me with hurts and disappointment and things that they're angry about.
That you could have done better.
That I could have done better, right? And I may look at it and be like, I did my best.
Yeah.
I gave you all I had. And that may be, you know what I mean? But there may come a day that my bill is due. And I cannot ask them for grace I wasn't willing to give.
Yeah.
I got to be willing to give it in order to ask for it. And so as hard as I tried to be a good mom, I know there are things that I could have done better.
But here's the beautiful thing I want to point out real quick.
Mm-hmm.
You are able to receive the grace because you know the source.
Mm-hmm.
And because you receive it and recognize it, you can give it, right? You have that understanding. When we don't have God as our source, we don't have a source of grace.
Mm-hmm.
We don't seek it, and we can't give it.
Yeah.
And then the cycle continues. But and the thing I really just want to stress is that it's nothing we can do of ourselves. All we can do is just believe and surrender.
Yeah.
And he takes care of the rest. People want to overcomplicate God. They want to overcomplicate our relationship with God. They want to overcomplicate what it takes to receive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where we get a bunch of doctrines of man and religion and all of these things that start clouding and complicating. And God's really just saying, I'm right here.
Mm-hmm. And that night at the retreat, that's when everything changed for me. That was when he just became, I always knew he was real, but he just, I don't know. I can't explain it.
You went from believing to
knowing.
I've had those moments.
Yes.
I've had that.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
I believed in him before that, and that night I knew him.
Yeah.
And ever since then, my life has not been the same. There has been no turning back. He changed me that night. The power of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And it started with, I had to forgive my father. That was the roadblock in my life. But there has been no turning back ever since then. I've been full force walking towards God. And that doesn't mean that there hasn't been things that I've had to overcome.
Sure,
I mean, he's slowly been chipping away
yeah.
everything that the world put on me, everything that I took on. And
yeah.
He's slowly been chipping it away. But it started that night. And my life has never been the same since then. And so, this is how good he is.
Yeah.
This is how good he is. That when I sat down to write his eulogy, I sat there and prayed that the Lord would remind me of everything about him because I was so afraid I would forget him. And this is how good God is. He's part of my story. My dad is part of my story. Yeah. So when I tell you how I came to know the Lord, I got to tell you about my dad.
So you'll never forget. I'll
never forget him. I'll never forget him,
Yeah.
And it didn't even occur to me when I was writing his eulogy and I'm sitting here praying to God, I'm so afraid I'm going to forget him. It didn't even occur to me that what had taken place. Yeah. And he truly is he's my testimony. He is part of my testimony. That's my story. Yeah. So I was so afraid that I would forget my dad, and the Lord made him part of my story. And so every time I tell somebody about the Lord, I get to tell them about my dad. So I can't ever forget him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. I look at your story and I think about how God works in our lives. Most of the time, not even realizing it, and that you kind of knew God was there your whole life, right? You knew he was there, you knew he was real, but it didn't go from I just believe in God to knowing until you were in a space where, first of all, you were with a group of like-minded, godly people, right? Which I don't think you have to be with other people. But it was a space that brought you to this surrender with him that you couldn't normally access on your own.
Yeah.
I think that's what was so powerful about those retreats, is because you have people there to help you through the process and praying over you and bringing their power and their faith into it, and they're pouring into you so that you can it's almost like it gives you a greater ability to release and surrender. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it feels safe, like you said, because you're around like-minded people. Yeah. But it also, it felt safe to be vulnerable because in sharing, in doing the circle and sharing, you realize you're not the only one going through this.
Yeah.
You're not alone. Right. People do understand. And, oh, hey, they're probably not going to judge me because she's lived it. She's living it, and you begin to realize this isn't anything that people haven't heard of before. There's nothing special about what's taking place here. I'm really not the only one to ever have unforgiveness towards my father,
Right.
So But the devil makes you think that,
Yes.
you think that I'm all alone. I'm the only one who's ever felt this way, and everyone's going to judge me. Here my dad is dying of cancer, and I resent the time that he's taking. Oh, people are going to look down on me. They're going to think so badly of me. And the truth is how often when someone is sick with cancer, we focus solely on the patient, and we don't ever ask the caretakers how they are. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do when someone, has this illness. You're driving them to and from appointments. You're taking care of them. You're cooking. You're cleaning. You're doing all the little things that you can, but you can't heal them. You can't fix them.
Right.
And so you feel completely helpless and exhausted all at the same time. And then you feel guilty for feeling exhausted because you're not the one who has cancer. What are you complaining about? You're healthy,
And you feel very alone in it. And you're right. That is kind of one of the tactics of the enemy, is to make us feel like we're alone. Or that we have to be alone out of shame. We have to hide it, right? Like that woman, nobody can know what's happening at my house kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Right? And it makes me think of the concept of divide and conquer. If he can keep us separated and secluded, then he can continue to convince us of his lies. And
because there's no one to counteract his lies.
That's right.
There's no one to tell you anything to the contrary.
And redirect you.
The only voice you're hearing is his.
Yeah.
If he's got you isolated.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important when you are struggling or when you're seeking that you find those outside support systems and the resources, or even, people, just having people to love you through it.
Yeah.
The importance of having those like-minded people around you,
Yeah.
to redirect you. Because I remember one of the first times we really got to spend time together was at a retreat. And it was early morning. It was 6:30 in the morning or something.
We were outside drinking our coffee.
Yes. We were outside drinking our coffee. And you said, because we knew we were supposed to be friends. And you said, I want a friend who I can go to, that if I'm struggling in my marriage, that they will encourage me in the Lord, that they will redirect me to the Lord and give me godly advice to fix and heal and help my marriage instead of worldly advice that will divide me even more, right?
Yeah.
I want a friend who's going to redirect me to God in my times of need, essentially, is what we talked about.
Yeah.
And I needed that friend too. And I remember when we did women's monthly women's community lunches for a little over 2 years, almost 2.5 years. And you had shared one time in the Bible, it talks about the crippled man on the mat.
Yeah.
And how his friends are the ones. He was so hurt, so crippled, so helpless.
He couldn't get to God.
He couldn't get to God.
And the crowds were surrounding him.
Yes.
Yeah, he can't get to Jesus.
It was impossible. It was impossible.
Yeah.
There was too big of a divide, too much in the way, too much
Jesus
pain,
is inside the house. He's
pain
surrounded.
and crippling.
He's surrounded by
Yeah.
people.
And you can't move.
The friends of the paralytic, they're like, we are going to get you to
Yes.
God.
They picked
We're going
up
to
his
get you
mat.
there. They pick him up. They take him to the rooftop of the house.
They fight through the crowd.
Dig out the house. They dig out the roof,
Yes.
right? And they lower him down.
To the very
Right?
presence of Jesus.
Those are the kind of friends I want.
Yes.
The ones that are throwing elbows.
Yes.
We're going to
Get out
get
of
you
the way.
over there.
Yes.
Everybody take
Yes.
a side. We're getting him.
Yes.
We're getting him to God.
I will never forget
Yeah.
that. And I was like, yes, that is the friend I want. And that is the friend I want to be.
Yes. Yes.
Because it is so important for people.
Not just that's who I want on my side. That's what I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to be someone who will throw elbows
Yeah.
to get you to the presence of God.
Yeah.
Like, you can't walk, I will pick up your mat.
I will carry you.
Yes, I will carry
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And if I got to lower you down,
Yeah.
And that's what they did. They dug out the roof
Yes.
and lowered him down. I mean, picture this.
I know, it's crazy.
We read these stories. This
Yeah.
actually happened.
Yeah.
These people had so much faith
Yes.
in who Jesus said he was.
Yes.
They had so much faith, and they believed. They were like, you know what? We are getting you to the man.
And they loved him enough.
Yes. Yeah.
They loved him enough to do it.
Mm-hmm.
See, because his identity was in his crippling.
Yeah, I can't get there, so I'm just going to sit on my mat.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, no. Everybody take a corner.
We're not going to settle for that. That's not good enough. Because I know who God is, right?
Right.
I know who God is, and I know what he can do for you, and I'm going to get you there.
Yeah. And I think of my life that so long I settled for what I thought were friends, but they never would have picked up my mat.
Yeah.
In fact, they laughed at me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
When you wanted to pray.
When I wanted to pray. When I wanted to talk about Jesus. When I didn't want to go to the parties and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And so he's really put in my heart a long time ago quality friendships. Mm-hmm. And so there was a period of my life that I would tell you that I didn't have any friends. It was just me and God all the time, but he was preparing me. He was preparing me. He was making me into the kind of friend that I was wanting. He got me to a place of being okay, being on my own without friends. That way I didn't compromise again.
Mm. Oh, yeah. That's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That way I knew what quality friendship looked like.
You were rooted in him.
I was so rooted in him, I was willing to not have any friends rather than surround myself with what I used to.
And be influenced away from him.
And be influenced in another way.
Yeah. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I had a yearning for God, and I knew I needed to change my life. And I had a conversation with one of my closest friends at the time, and I love them so much. I haven't been able to talk to them in a long time, over probably close to 15 years now, because I moved to another town. But I remember having a conversation, and I said, I have to do this, and I want this. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And I think he realized in that moment that God was more important than everything else. Mm-hmm. And he loved me enough to let me go. See, at the time, though, because I had an encounter with God, but where I was living, I was surrounded by religion. Mm. And I didn't know the difference. Yeah. And so I knew I needed God. I had an encounter with God. I knew I needed to change my life and move in that direction. I just didn't know how. Mm-hmm. And so I clung to the nearest religion to get me to God, to get me further with God. So when I was telling him, I need to join this religion, this is what I want, he was like, really? And now looking back, I truly believe he didn't say that to me because he didn't believe in God. Mm-hmm. He said that to me because he was like, almost like you're willing to step into that bondage for God. Does that make sense? I think he actually, because his wife, who was also my very best friend from high school, those two were my best friends in high school, and then come the years after, that she was not of that common religion. She had moved to that state from like back east somewhere, and so they were a different religion, had different understandings, and knew that there was some folly there, and so they saw things different than I did. But what I knew is that I had to change, and I had to step away. And sometimes you have friends that will understand that. Sometimes you have friends that won't. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to just decide, what do I really want? Mm-hmm. I talk a lot in my Bible studies about we have to choose. There comes a point in our lives where we have to choose what we want in this world. Mm-hmm. Do we want God or not? Yeah. And that's that rooting. And a lot of the time he does separate us and brings us into the wilderness Like in Ezekiel, I think it's 20:35, it says, I will take you into the wilderness of my people. There I will plead with you face to face. It's when he separates us so that he can plead with us face to face. And then when we can get rooted enough in him, that's when we can step out and be a better friend and have better friendships. And, you know, the world moves differently after that. After you have that with him.
Yeah.
Everything's different.
Yeah. He brought me to a place of, I don't worry about missing out on things anymore. You know, I know I won't, there are things that I don't compromise with anymore. I just don't do them anymore. I don't go to those places anymore, you know, and for a while, even in the beginning of walking with him, that was the rejection and being left out was something that I had to deal with. I'll never forget when I was early in this journey, and one of my sisters called me and asked if I would, if I'd babysit her daughter for the night. Could she stay the night at my house? They were all going out for one of them's birthday, and they were going out to the bar. Okay? And in the past, I would have been invited, and I would have gone. You know, but they knew that I wasn't living like that anymore. And so she called and asked, would I babysit her daughter for the night so that she could go? And I was like, okay, you know, and I get off the phone and I go to my husband and I was like, so everyone's going out to the bar for so-and-so's birthday. And my husband looks at me and he's like, okay. I said, and I've been asked to babysit.
I wasn't invited.
Yeah. I was like, they didn't invite me.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and goes, would you have gone? Would we have gone? And I was like, well, no, but that's not the point. They could have asked. Instead, they asked me to babysit, you know? And I turned around and walked out of the room. And I really did, like, I felt so rejected.
Yeah.
I was like, they didn't even ask me to go. Just call and ask me to babysit? Seriously? You know? And I didn't call anybody. I didn't walk around complaining to Sean. I said it that one time, and then I walked out of the room and I went and sat down and I was like, seriously, Lord? Like, you know? And I heard the Lord say, they're respecting you. And I was like, huh? They're respecting the way that you live. They're not inviting you to go because they respect you. And they trust you with their child.
Oh, wow.
And I saw the situation completely different. I no longer felt rejected. I felt respected.
Yeah.
You know, and it was such a turning point. You know, it was that, you know, I've had this fear of rejection that I had to get past. And in that moment, here it came again. They've rejected me. They don't want me to go.
Yep.
But I wasn't being rejected. I was being respected.
Yeah.
And that was huge. And so I just don't have this fear of missing out any longer. You know, if I don't get invited to something, okay, for whatever reason, they didn't think I would come. They didn't think it was something I would do. You know, they're respecting the way that they see me live, you know? And so.
And again, it comes back to in the ways God moves is he shows us and he changes our perspective and understanding.
Yeah.
You know, that's the greatest thing. One of the greatest gifts that he brings with his Holy Spirit is that changing of mind. It's actually repentance, right? The repentance is to change your mind. And when he shows us, when God shows you something, it comes with a full understanding with it, you know? And it can even happen in just a moment, and even just a couple words whispered in your mind, or a thought or an image. And with it is attached a complete understanding of renewal. So when you receive that from him, you're like, oh my gosh, it just changes everything.
Yeah.
It changes how you see things. It changes how you feel. And he's able to just move freely in us to change us And when we have that, it's I mean, it really is a game changer.
Yeah.
In forgiveness and even being offended. One of the things that Elizabeth says in her ministry a lot is she wants us as her leaders and her members of her ministry to be so rooted in God that we are unoffendable. Yeah. Do you remember? I think that was actually one of her God words for that year was unoffendable. And I've thought a lot about that. And I'm like, the only way we could ever become unoffendable is if we know who we are with God and that we are so, just like she says, rooted in Him, connected to Him, that we know Him. We don't just believe in Him, we know Him, that He's our source. So when somebody does do something to offend us and we're like, He can come in and whisper, hey, and change it and fix it for us, so we don't have to live in that. We don't have to walk in that. We serve such an awesome God. And I just love how he moves in us, and He's so willing. When we are willing to turn to Him, He's so willing to come to us. You know, it says, knock and ye shall receive. Or no, not, what does it say?
Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. Yeah. Knock and the door shall be opened. Yeah.
Yep. That if we ask and ye shall receive, knock and it will be opened unto you. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you. He's willing to always just, I believe He's always just right there. Always right there, wanting to be there for us and show up. And He works in us in these beautiful ways. And, you know, some of the things that you've shared today with, first I want to thank you for being vulnerable, you know, and sharing your story. But He gives us this new understanding, a renewed mind, new perspective. He gives us these beautiful gems. It says that we are vessels of clay. He is the potter and we are the clay. And He makes us into these new vessels. And then He begins to fill us with these gems, these beautiful treasures and gems of knowledge, but also gems of wisdom and love and understanding and spiritual gifts, talents, abilities, that when, you know, we're willing to just submit, surrender, that He can do that for all of us. He's right there waiting all the time.
Yeah. Ready to pour out more.
That's right.
He freely pours.
My cup overfloweth. So I just want to thank you for being with me today and taking your time.
Yeah.
Sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your friendship and your love. So that is it for today, and we thank you for joining us as well. Take care. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time, stay close to the Lord. There's always more gems of knowledge waiting for you.